If one hip always feels blocked, if you always shift into the same side when squatting, pulling or dipping, and no amount of stretching seems to change that, then this video is for you. Because in most cases, this isn't a mobility issue, it's a shifting problem. If one hip always feels blocked, if you always shift into the same side when you squat, pull and dip, and no amount of stretching seems to change that, then this video is for you. Because in most cases, this isn't a hip mobility problem, it's a shifting problem. And if you don't restore the ability to shift into the side you avoid, your body will stay frozen in the same strategy. And no matter how much you stretch, it won't get better. Most athletes actually don't have bad hips. What they have is a system that has learned to live in one side of the body. Over time, the body picks a side, a dominant side. That side becomes the place where you stack, load, and generate force. The other side slowly loses relevance. And when the system stops trusting one side to accept load, it removes options. Hip flexion disappears, hip internal rotation closes down. Not because the joint is stiff, but because the system no longer uses this position. This is what I mean when I say your body gets frozen in time. You're not broken and you're not damaged. You're just locked into a strategy that used to work at some point. The problem is the strategy never updated. So instead of shifting from side to side, you stay biased towards one side. And the hip on the other side never truly loads. It never gets to flex and internally rotate under control. So the body protects it. Hip internal rotation doesn't disappear randomly. It disappears when the pelvis never shifts over that femur. If you can't get your weight into that side, if you never feel pressure through the heel or midfoot, the femur never really learns how to internally rotate and flex under load. So the system closes the door. Trying to stretch that hip won't solve the problem because the issue isn't length. This matters far beyond the hip. Your upper body sits on top of your pelvis and it adapts to whatever position exists below or whatever bias exists below. So if your pelvis lives on one side, the ribcage will follow and also your shoulders will follow. The whole body will orientate in the same direction. Orientation means the whole thing moving in the same direction. That's why upper body asymmetries don't respond to endless shoulder drills. You can't stack a symmetrical upper body on an asymmetrical base. Fix the base and then the system reorganizes upward. The goal isn't to improve hip internal rotation or hip flexion. The goal is to relearn how to shift into the side where we lost the ability to accept load, absorb force and shift into, right? We want to learn how to shift into that side and out of the other. So if the problem is that you've lost the ability to shift into one side, then the solution is not stretching hip internal rotation. The solution is teaching the system how to move the pelvis over that femur again. And for that, I mainly use two exercises. The first exercise that we're going to choose is the kickstand hinge. This is our primary drill to restore hip internal rotation axis. This exercise is not about hinging more and it's not about the glutes. Its real purpose is to teach the pelvis how to shift and rotate over one hip. When you place one foot slightly back and unload it, you force the center of mass onto the front leg. That gives the pelvis a reason to move toward and over that hip. As you hinge, the femur needs to internally rotate relative to the pelvis for that movement to happen cleanly. If that side is usually avoided, this is where the system starts regain access. You're not forcing internal rotation, you're creating the condition where it becomes necessary again. That's the key difference. And the second exercise that we're going to choose is a front foot elevated split squat. This one is about learning how to stay on the front side instead of shifting back or across. By elevating the front foot, you increase the demand for hip flexion on that side. But more importantly, you ask the pelvis to stay forward and centered over that femur as you move down. For athletes with asymmetries, this is usually where they escape. They either shift back or too far forward, rotate too far inward or away from the midline, or just dump into the dominant side. So the goal here is very specific. Pelvis stays orientated forward over the front hip, knee tracks forward nicely in line with the second toe, and weight stays on the front heel and midfoot. When that happens, hip internal rotation is no longer blocked, it's expressed as part of the movement. Neither of these exercises are meant to improve hip internal rotation. They're meant to restore our ability to shift into the side where we lost access to. Internal rotation comes back because the system needs it again. And that's the carryover that we want to get. Once the pelvis moves freely from side to side, the bias disappears. The rib cage no longer has to counter-rotate, the shoulders no longer have to compensate. You didn't fix the upper body directly, you just changed where the body lives in space. So if you're stuck on one side and stretching hasn't worked so far, this might be the reason why. You don't need more mobility, you just need to restore the shift. When your shift improves, you will notice the following things. More even pressure in squats, less tightness in the front of the hip at the bottom of a squat, better balance in pull-ups and dips, and shoulders feeling less stuck overhead. And that is not because you fixed a single joint, but because you restored a missing option in the system. Most asymmetries aren't something you need to fight. They're things you need to understand. If you can't shift into a side, your body will never fully give access to it. Restore the shift and a lot of mobility problems will solve itself. That's it for today's video, and please, if you haven't done yet, support me by subscribing to this channel, like this video and share it with your friends. And if you're looking for guidance in your training or you need help because you're in pain, you're struggling with the right amount of volume, with the right training split, then reach out for my one-on-one online coaching. The coaching is currently closed, but the waitlist for 2026 is open. And if you want to be the first one to be notified when the coaching spots open again, then sign up in the waitlist. The link is in the description down below. And see you in the next one.